and warm welcome to SAP on Azure podcast. Today, with Holger and myself, as always, we will talk everything and anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello. So, security was always an extremely topic, and today is even more in the fast-moving world. We know, there are reports that some corporation would lose even £2 billion, and have a big damage, not to mention also the reputation. Um, Security is a complex topic. It's really goes through the multiple layers of identity management, of audit logging, and event management, security orchestration, automation, and antivirus and anti-malware and encryption, operating system hardware, and Azure infrastructure hardening, networking hardening. Um, and Today we are really happy to have again, one of the legend of SAP and Microsoft, Cameron, who work on wonderful document, which is actually on a overall strategy overview and security overview and which is published on the official Microsoft documentation for SAP. So Cameron, really warmly welcome to the show back again.
Yes, good to be back. Thanks, Goran. Thanks, Holger.
And I'm just thinking for the guy, we had you in the past, many people know you, but might be that there are some guys who do not know you, so maybe for those guys who do not know you, you can do a short intro, who you are, what you do.
Sure. So my name's Cameron Gardiner. I'm based in Singapore. I've been at Microsoft for, I think, about 18 years now. I started in SQL Server, and many years ago when Microsoft's focus was SQL Server, and then moved into Azure development. I work on customer escalations, performance, certification, benchmarking, and one area of interest over the last few years has been security, starting off with Defender, but Defender is only one very small part. As we're going to see as we walk through this documentation, it's one part of an overall solution.
So you work on this. I read your kind of white paper document, and it is really wonderful, So, I know you were writing in the past also many white papers and documents, and I love it, the overview that you always make, and insight. So you were kind of ChatGPT before the ChatGPT, so to say. So tell us a bit more. Tell us a bit more about, the whole problematic and why is this important, and what did you cover, so to say? Because security is a complex topic, a multidimensional topic, and you need to go through those all different layers, right?
Yeah, it's a very difficult topic to document. One of the most difficult I've ever tried to document at Microsoft, but in the past, customers tried to secure their SAP systems by basically trying to isolate SAP from the rest of the data center. And we've seen today with modern sophisticated threats, this simply doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So previously customers said, well, I've got SAP on its own VLAN and all the ports except for just a very few are closed, and there's no direct access from internet. And I wish we were in a world where this was now sufficient, but unfortunately the threats now are so sophisticated, and so fileless threats are one example. For Windows customers, one example I give is that a few years ago, somebody figured out that the Windows event log allows you to store a little bit of binary data. So somebody figured out how to push a little bit of malware into a Windows event.
Oh,
And then
really?
they could then extract it and execute it. So
Okay, interesting.
Unbelievable.
I mean, this is where you say, well, I'm running antivirus and checking my files once a day. Well, I'm sorry, there is no file. It is stored inside the blob.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So these threats are just so sophisticated. I think you really have to assume a pre-breach hardening, and then you have to assume that once you're breached, how you're going to detect and close that down. And the documentation is a starting point for customers to step off. It's very hard to provide a one-size-fits-all. You see, I do provide a checklist, which would be sort of the minimums. But then with conversations with customers, security can also go too far. If you do a huge amount of security hardening, when you go to do a system refresh, system copy, test your high availability or disaster recovery, it's going to be very, very difficult to do that. So yeah, that's why I provide a base, and everybody should look at what fits their scenario and make sure they put as many layers in. I'll share my screen and show some of the impact for a car manufacturing customer in the UK. This is just maybe 2 months ago. So this caused a huge disruption. Was actually, so the way these attacks work is a lot of the time they're using multiple vulnerabilities. So it's not just SAP vulnerabilities they're exploiting here. They, believe it or not, so people can go through this article later. We should put the links in. But believe it or not, you can actually buy toolkits on the dark web that will show you, give you a list, a whole host of vulnerabilities. And in this particular case, one of them was an SAP vulnerability. They found it in the script, and the SAP CVEs are here. So consequences of not following up on security are pretty severe. So that's why on our official SAP documentation, under SAP Azure workloads, and put it under concepts and security. So,
and that's the new one, I believe, right? The newer documents which you
yes.
recently added. Yeah,
Yep.
not existing before. Yeah.
Yep. The version tag should be at the very bottom. You see this one was updated just today. Some minor edits. So we're recording this today. So we don't have time or space to go through the entire document. It would really take hours to step through this. But part of the problem in documenting security is it's so wide. So we sort of have a few domains. We have the identity management, which I'm going to cover in another session. Just for those who are watching, you'll see there's an identity management and authentication in the security tab. One that we're still working on the documentation is the auditing, log analytics, event management, and that feeds into your SIEM and SOAR. The focus of this session will be these topics here. And so we'll go through the AV, encryption, operating system hardening, and then a whole host of things to do at the Azure level that will, I would say to customers, you don't need to have the most secure, and you don't have to be the best secured customer, but so long as you're at least to some minimum levels, then I think you'll find these hackers, they will go somewhere else. They'll go to an easier target. So I'll go very quickly. The Microsoft Zero Trust architecture, I would recommend the SAP team sit with the enterprise security team and get a bit of a briefing on Zero Trust and this model, and go through some of the documentation. This really forms the foundation. We can't really spend too much time on that because there's honestly, a lot of it is not SAP specific. It's very important, but it's not SAP specific. And I want us to focus on the SAP centric points. What I do is give a deployment checklist. So as I mentioned in the intro, if you do a very highly secured system, it's going to make your operations like refreshes, HADR testing very, very difficult. But as a minimum, Defender for Endpoint, guidance to customers here, if you have one endpoint that is not protected, then as I discussed earlier about the storing malware into Windows Event Viewer binary field, if you've got one unprotected endpoint, we can almost argue that none of your endpoints are protected. So we have spent a lot of effort in making sure Defender for Endpoint is 100% prime time ready on Windows, on Linux, on HANA, on Oracle, on DB2, for SAP systems of any size, any volume. Defender's ready. If anyone has any problems with Defender, open a case, contact me, post comments down below. We will get that working. We have, I think I can say, we have more than 100,000 virtual machines out there running SAP and Defender, and we have a tiny rate where we come across issues, and when we do, we know what they are and we know how to fix them. So Defender for XDR, I'll go through this later, but very important. Sentinel, you have to have at least some SIEM or SOAR. For databases, theft of backup is one common issue. So TDE, I think, is considered by most serious customers now to be a default. I'm not sure about you guys, but do you see TDE as a default of customers you talk to?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Storing passwords, please put them in Azure Key Vault. For Linux systems, should be using certificates, not users and passwords. Trusted launch and generation 2 VMs. There are a few little details about that we'll come to next. And storage account with PMK and immutable storage. That's to defend against ransomware. We have a whole section on ransomware coming up. So for more secure, we introduce a few things like customer managed keys. stronger segregation of duties within your team. That you have to protect against internal and external threats, unfortunately. So Defender for Endpoint, I documented Linux and Windows. I think I was on your show maybe
Correct,
a year ago. I can't remember when. But as I say, any SAP system out there on Windows, SUSE, Red Hat, or Oracle Linux, running any SAP system of any size, if you follow this documentation, it will work. If you ever hit any, so where do we hit problems? So if you have a SAP mount directory with I think it was 50 million files.
Okay. Needs to be scanned a lot.
50 million is quite a lot. So in the documentation, I call out where there are areas we have to be a bit careful, but so long as there's nothing crazy going on, even if a system is very large and very busy, it's no problem. We have also, we're the only AV solution out there on the market that does this. We've profiled HANA with Defender. So when Defender looks at a HANA data file or finds the HANA processes, it knows that this is a trusted application, and it knows what the header and the header of your HANA index file looks like. So that helps as well. One slightly dangerous functionality inside SAP is the ability to execute an external command. So the basis people will know SM49 and SM69. Now that's really, really dangerous if it's unchecked. So what I did was develop custom hunting rules. So for example, in this example here, I show you how to catch SAP XPG. In this case, it's calling wget. So it could be wget to download some malware. So on Windows, we can block a command. On Linux, we can report a command. But these are some commands that you may wish to monitor or create a rule around or alert on. But yeah.
Yeah, there are multiple entry points into how you can execute, for example, something. Yeah, and that's
the thing is, a lot of users have the permission to create a batch job. And when you create a batch job, one of the entries is for an SAP XPG command. So the SAP security guys, the guys doing your roles and profiles, need to be a little careful with this, because you can say wget and download malware. And then your next command is change mod plus X. Then your next command is to call that, and that is very risky. Sentinel for SAP, we have a great tool and good documentation. I really don't want to go through Sentinel now, because we will do a whole other session on logging, event management, SIEM, SOAR. But it is absolutely one very important layer for a SAP security solution. TDE, some customers have historically worried about performance. So we can say the performance overhead is somewhere between 0 to 2% on HANA. On SQL, I would argue it's closer to 0. Oracle and DB2, we've never had any negative feedback. Remember that on Azure with modern Intel CPUs, the AES 256, that's a silicon instruction. It's not running in software. That's running on the CPU as an instruction. So I give the documentation and notes regarding activating TDE for, you can see HANA here, SQL Server next, Oracle, and DB2 down here. So one little pushback I get is that with SQL Server, we have a very good way of storing the key inside Azure Key Vault. Now, as of today, HANA does not support storing the key inside an HSM or inside Key Vault. I've talked to some people, they know this is a bit of a gap. I think watch the space. There may be some updates here, but TDE absolutely recommended. So key management, Key Vault is a great tool. If you're running an all HANA solution or a SQL Server solution, you really don't need an HSM. If you've got Oracle or DB2, then we have the Azure Cloud HSM, which is a hardware level, and the standard amongst all these vendors like ToWs, etc., is PKCS11. So our Azure Cloud HSM is PKCS11 compliant. Azure Key Vault is not PKCS11. So, but as a minimum, I would say store all the user password keys, store everything inside your Azure Key Vault. Okay, OS hardening. So had some feedback from customers regarding Linux hot patching. So Linux hot patching, if you're running Defender, you have to imagine what Defender is doing in terms of surveillance and monitoring on memory and kernel. And when you do a hot kernel patch, it really doesn't know what you just did and has caused problems. So if you're doing Linux hot patching, you should temporarily stop Defender first because it really doesn't like finding the results of hot patching. So for our Linux distros, absolutely Gen 2 with secure boot. A topic that I would recommend is try to limit the number of repositories that you have connected to your Linux virtual machine. The ideal, if you're such and such a company, that you curate your own repository. So you might not even be connected to a Microsoft repository or whichever repository. You curate and maintain your own repository, and having many third-party repositories for Zipper or DNF or whatever, this is potentially dangerous. Some colleagues of mine worked on improving the security for Pacemaker, so switching from service principal name to MSI is, we would recommend MSI for all pacemaker customers. Just a note, customers ask me about SE Linux. So there's a lot of news about this topic. SAP want to get this mainstreamed, and so do the Linux vendors. So I think we'll see with the next release of Red Hat that we might even see SE Linux more or less becoming a default. So I'd say to customers out there, the SAP team, it's really important to start learning about SE Linux, start experimenting with it. Honestly, I would say it's not ready today for SAP. There's some documents out there, but it's still very early. But the next Red Hat release, I think we will see SE Linux going mainstream. So this will really be a huge advancement in security for Linux platforms. We have SE Linux working. So Windows, I'll just very quickly go through secure boot, configure firewall via a GPO, turn off the old SMB client. I mean, basically everything should be SMB3 or later. The most important thing for the Windows customers, if they listen to nothing other than what I say next, make sure that your service account for SAP, so SAP Service SID, make sure that it is not an administrator. So if there's only one thing you take away from this session and you're a Windows customer, go and check that your SAP Service SID is not an administrator. So
I mean, which should be default by the SAP installation, but it might be that somebody changed, or it might be there are some older.
What typically happens is somebody creates a batch job. The batch job writes out a file to some share somewhere on //server/output file, and the batch job fails with a security access problem. And the quick and easy way of solving that problem is to make the SAP Service SID an administrator.
Okay.
And we find this. So I'm working on a security configuration advisor tool that will alert on this. So in your dashboard with Defender, you will see this. That's in progress. Watch the space. But this is really dangerous because if somebody abuses the SAP XPG mechanism, they're running as a local admin.
Yeah. And maybe for those guys who are not on SAP on Windows, so SAP processes running under the subservice SID user, so to say.
Yeah.
Meaning, therefore, it is very sensitive, so to say, what kind of privilege and the minimum privilege it should have in order to run something. Yeah.
Yep. So in that case, if you have file access problems, then make the share, give SAP Service SID access to the share. Don't make SAP Service SID an administrator. Please, if there's nothing else. So Azure Security Infrastructure, so Gen 2 and Trusted Launch. So at the moment, all modern operating systems, we can do Trusted Launch. If there are customers out there on Gen 1 VMs, we do have a migration path. It is a little complex for Windows customers, But I would say if your virtual machines are Gen 1, I would be making a plan to move to Gen 2 trusted launch right away. I would not be running on Gen 1 any longer. If there are many reasons, there are size and scale reasons, I would make a plan to move to Gen 2. If you want to further future-proof your solution, moving to NVMe-based virtual machines in the same activity would be recommended as well. So if you're running on Gen 1, there are multiple reasons to move to Gen 2, but I think just the security alone justifies the activity. So older versions of SUSE, for example, don't support Gen 2 and trusted launch, so you need to be on reasonably modern. But I give the links and the status. Okay, encryption in transit. So people watching NFS shares with packet traces, this does happen. So we now support encryption in transit for NFS and also for Azure Files SMB. Encryption at host for customers who are more security conscious. This adds an additional security layer. Your temp disk is encrypted and a number of other things. There is an overhead, so around 2%. So customers can evaluate. I give a very good table here, overview of managed disks. So you can compare what feature does what at what layer. So go through this table and think about that. Just a note here, Azure Disk Encryption is not supported for SAP systems, and the feature itself is actually sunset already. Virtual network encryption. Today, a few restrictions around this. Watch this space. We are doing more testing on this, and for certain scenarios, we will have more documentation on this. This is another layer of security for an SAP infrastructure, especially if there's some gateway that is eventually public facing or has complex scenarios could benefit from this. Now, a feature that's not documented a great deal is total memory encryption. So this prevents people from forcing a crash on a virtual machine guest or host and then grabbing the dump file and spending a huge amount of time and resource and digging through that dump file. And I don't think it's a secret, but things like SAS keys, shared access signature keys, have been found in memory dumps. So total memory encryption completely negates that option. Now, very high security customers, we have some, and they come to us and say that the Azure automation account for Azure Site Recovery or backup, so the automation account that updates your agent is running as a contributor role, which in Azure is very, very high, I would say. So we have a way to lower that and give that Azure automation account a much lower, much more confined security now. So the ASR guys document that. Okay, I will jump just for the sake of time, because I know we're a bit restricted on time. Just to say Azure Bastion, please use it. It's one of the more secure ways to manage. But ransomware protection. So until today, I think some of our customers still have a huge amount of confidence in their backup restore mechanism, and are maybe not doing quite enough around immutable storage. I mean, Goran and Holger, are you seeing immutable storage in European customers?
I heard some, yes. Yeah, but not some. Maybe then there is a less, I guess, less of awareness. Maybe that's something like this exists. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in today's environment, I think it's almost every customer minimum at least some of the backups. You know, ideally every day, but if this is too difficult, too expensive, or whatever, I mean, if you had one per week and you still had your logs, you know, you're going to be rolling a lot of logs. It's going to take a long time, but still you won't lose data. Whereas the ransomware guys, you know, they're different layers. Like there's fully locked. There is another one where we can enter in a PIN code. I document that somewhere. If you want to change, you have to, PIN or MFA before anyone can modify backups. So your Microsoft Authenticator on your mobile app, or you have to enter a PIN, or you can configure fully locked, which means there's absolutely no way that the storage can ever be deleted. Maybe not that useful for SAP backups. Probably PIN or MFA is more useful. So if I was a customer, I would be putting this near the top of the list. So in the Asia region, Asia Pacific region, there are SAP customers that have been ransomwared. I know this. Unsupported technologies. So Azure Disk Encryption is no longer supported. Now, I put a link to the SAP security notes because I still find some SAP customers are not regularly checking this. So the second Tuesday of every month, SAP release their security note collections, and they actually just released some. Now, CVE scores are out of 10, and it's actually fairly difficult to have a 10 out of 10. But there are so a 10 out of 10 CVE can mean that you can have access to an operating system, maybe without any username or authentication. All you need is TCP access. So some of these are very serious, and from what I see, every month or so, SAP have multiple very, very scary looking security vulnerabilities. So you can go to I link it in the document.
Yeah.
So you can go to the searchable database and filter on the CVE score. And if you're seeing anything over 9, I would be acting on that into dev and QA. I'd be hoping you could get that into dev the same day it's released, maybe into QA the next day, and then within a few days into prod. I wouldn't be waiting weeks for any of these ones that are more than 9.
I think there's even a newsletter or something like that, or a notification that you do get an active push from SAP about these security incidents, and that there's now a fix available and you should act on it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So some of them require you to apply a note with S-Note. Some of them have a mitigation where you can just go and deactivate some functionality. Sometimes some of the Java ones, you can just deactivate the service to mitigate the risk. But I would not ignore this. I think security for SAP systems, maybe it hasn't had the priority that other areas such as operating system and infrastructures had over the years, but definitely it is important.
Mm.
And this is one area. Definitely don't forget about the SAP application layer notes, because we can harden the infrastructure, but if the application has major gaps, the chain is as strong as its weakest link here.
Yeah.
So I've talked long enough. Are there any areas you want to touch on, focus on?
I would say, I mean, it's amazing overview document with many links going into depth. But I mean, the message would be that security is a kind of no-brainer, and it's a kind of must-have, and there must not be even discussion. This is too expensive to invest, because what can happen, hopefully not, but what can happen, and those losses would go in much higher numbers or in the damage than in the potential investment, right? And
yeah, it really shouldn't be ignored. I'm just thinking about a particular case where there was a SAP customer that had part of their SAP system exposed to other third-party companies for RFCs. So it's quite a common scenario, interfaces, and they really hadn't secured as well as they could have, and they weren't watching the SAP security notes as closely as they should have. In particular, the old SAP Java applications, I think it would be, I think it's fair to say that security wasn't, back when SAP were heavily invested in Java, security wasn't in the top category of priorities. So that's a little bit reflected in some of the Java applications out there.
Yeah. We would definitely invite all the customer to put any question or comments either on this video or on the official documentation as well. And as you mentioned, you would always come back to them quite quickly. You mentioned a lot of upcoming topics,
Yes.
Cameron, so I would say we are looking forward for the upcoming next session on also on the security and many others, right? So thank you so much, and really looking forward for the upcoming sessions, right?
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank
you
you so
guys.
much.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.